Okay, I'm going to start the sponsors, and hopefully by then Erwin and Harvey and anybody else will get on, okay?
All right.
All right. Sponsorships, A Year of Learning by Dr. Paul Koningsberg in memory of his brother, Dr. Sam Koningsberg, Shimon Reuben ben Labish, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nisan Hara Nisan ben Fardosa. Paula and Bob Bromberg, in memory of their dear friend Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. Malka Mann, in memory of her family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Israel David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. The many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi, friends of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Avi Gitler, Avrameir ben Shimon, Cheryl Schur, her children and grandchildren, in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Harav Akiva. A Month of Learning by Lynn Rappaport, in memory of her husband, Avram ben Benzion HaKohen. A Week of Learning by Marcia and Gary Schrager, in memory of her mother, Miriam Yenta Bas Baruch. Today is also a Day of Learning plus Torah Fund, sponsored by Susan and Fred Koss, in memory of her mother, Edith Esther Bas Pinchas. And that is it. May the Neshamas have an Aliyah, Kranker Rafia, Veldi Yashir, Hashem Ataliah, and the Chol B'nai Yisrael, a good Kabenshtia.
Amen.
Okay. All right. I see Erwin is on, which is good. And hopefully Harvey will be up to getting on this morning. So, and I guess Ted, either he has difficulty there in Orlando or whatever. Okay. We are on Nun Tet Amud Aleph, right?
Yeah.
Just a quick review of the Mishnah from the bottom of the previous Amud reminds us that we should be using a mumche, a expert surveyor, and that when he, having done so, okay, if he increases the space in one and decreases, we follow that. If he decreases, all right, we still follow the increase, right? That number two, that a servant, woman or male, all right, is believed if they say that where the end of the Shabbos Tchum is, okay? Why? Because the sages say the whole idea of Erev Tchumim is like Hakel and not Lahachmir. Okay? All right. Now, on Nun Tet Amud Aleph, we're going to get into a question here, right? That's where the Gemara is going to start off. And it's going to ask the following, okay? L'makom sheriba en l'makom shemi'et lo. If we're going to trust the expert surveyor and say in a certain place where he increases the tchum, yes, we follow him. Why shouldn't we then, likewise, if he limits the tchum, follow him there as well? Okay, so we have to think of the following. Think of the town, and you've got four directions: north, south, east, and west. Okay, so think of it as a situation. One possibility, okay, is that on one, let's say the easterly direction, he's stretched the tchum, okay, for whatever reason, and in the westerly direction, he's shortened the tchum. That's one scenario. Okay. Now I'm going to give you a different scenario. Okay. Let's assume that it was a round city, and we said we make it into a square, right? Now what happens is we do two measurements on each side of the square. Okay. So what we do is we do one measurement from, let's say, the northeast corner going out, and another measurement from the southeast corner going out. Okay? In that situation, what happens if the expert surveyor stretches, let's say, the northeast corner's measurement to the tchum, but shortened, for whatever reason, the southeast corner's measurement? That's both on the same, so to speak, side. Okay? So that could also be a situation that the Gemara is talking about, raising a question about. Okay? So having presented those options, okay, let's continue now. Ema, I might say, af lemakom sheriba. Here too, I would say, okay, in this case where he shortened it, okay, one is not permitted to walk. Okay? Now the Gemara picks up and continues with the next part that riba le'echad u'ed le'echad. If he extended to one and shortened to one. Now that's really, okay, Marvin, I think you have to move a little bit. I can hear Shirley in the background. Okay, so what happens? Okay, so the Gemara says as follows: Ha tu lamali. Why do we need it? Basically saying the same thing again. Good morning, Harvey. Okay. Okay. In other words, take our second scenario where we have a squared city, or a rounded that's become squared, and the surveyors measured both from the northeast corner and the southeast corner, but they did not come out the same distance. So the Gemara is asking again, why do we need to mention this again, right? Why do we say this example again? Hainu hach, isn't it the same thing? Hachi ka'amar, this is what it means to tell us. Riba echad, in other words, it's saying, in this case, it wasn't the same surveyors that did the measurement. For the northeast corner, the two surveyors, okay, measured it a certain amount. Now from the southeast corner, we're going to see it was a different surveyor. And that's what the Gemara is suggesting. This hachi kamar, this is what it's telling us. Riva echad, okay, increased by one of the surveyors, ume'et echad, and it was shortened by another surveyor. Shom'im la sheriba, shomrim lazeh. We follow and listen to the one who increased it. Now, Amar Abaye, said Abaye, ubilvad shelo yirbeh yoter mibidat ha'ir ba'al kasona. So long as that surveyor did not have the increased amount, okay, different from the second surveyor, longer than what was the angle, the diagonal of the from that corner. Okay, if you look at the notes on 59A1, okay, the diagram, okay? You can see, okay, that diagonally we have a tchum of a certain amount, okay? Right? But the diagonal is going to be longer. So therefore that difference there, okay, it's all right. Okay, so what happens? We now come back to another piece from our Mishnah. Shelo amru chachamim et hadavar lahachmir ele lahakel. That the sages said it was primarily, right, to be a situation not to be stringent, but to be lenient. Vahatanya, says the Gemara, but aren't we taught elsewhere in a Braita? Lo amru chachamim et hadavar lahakel, ele lahachmir, that it wasn't said to be lenient, but instead it was said to be strict. Okay? Amar Ravina, says Ravina, lo lahakel al divrei Torah. No, what was meant by the Braita, it wasn't meant to be lenient on Torah-mandated law, ele lahachmir al divrei Torah, but rather to be stringent in terms of biblical law. Utchumim the Rabbanan, but the whole idea of tchum, Shabbos, since it's rabbinical, that's there for lahakel. Okay, we get to a new Mishnah. Okay, now this new Mishnah, for whatever reason, does the Mefarshim question what's it doing here in this chapter? It really should have belonged to one of the previous chapters, since its topic really deals with Erev Chatzerot and not with Erev Tchumim. Okay, but there is one suggestion by one of the Mefarshim that since we talked before, right, about various cities, okay, and people, okay, what makes the city, okay, such, all right, what can we do, all right? This is what we have, okay? Hold on a second. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll have to call you back. I'm in the middle of the shiur right now. Okay. Bye. Okay. All right. So what happens? So coming back then to this situation, we're talking about a city, okay, that originally had a single owner and then became a public city, or vice versa. Somehow it was a public city, and then it became back to or went a single ownership. Okay, so that's an initial example. Matnit in our Mishnah says, Ir shel yachid v'neseit shel rabim. Okay, an city that had belonged to an individual, let's say it was a private town, okay, and it became a public town. Okay, now, how did that happen? Some of the Mefarshim say perhaps the person rented out property or sold property. But in either case, increase of population now made it a public town. Okay? Ma'arvin et kula, says the Mishnah. We need to be able to set a eruv, okay, around the entire town, okay, in this case, right? But what happens? V'shel rabim, okay, v'ne'eseit shel yachid, or let's say it was the opposite. It was a public town, and then it became a private town. Ein ma'arvin et kula. We cannot then make an eruv around, eruv chatzerut, for the entire town. Ela im kain asa chutzala ke'ir chadasha shebYehuda. Unless there is a new town or city nearby, next to it, like in Yehuda, sheyesh ba chamishim diurim divrei Rabbi Yehuda, where this new town or village has at least 50 residents. That's the view of Rabbi Yehuda. Okay? Rabbi Shimon disagrees, and he's going to say to us, Omer shalosh chatzerot shel shnei batim. Okay? Namely, it's sufficient if the new, I'm going to call it for the moment, neighborhood has 3 courtyards with 2 dwellings, 2 houses in each courtyard. Okay. Now we can go on to this Gemara. Hechidami, how is it, says the Gemara, Ir shel yachid v'ne'eset shel rabim? How is it that was originally a town as a private town and then became a public town? Okay, says the Gemara. Amar Rav Yehuda says, Kigon the Isak Rita, okay, like the town of Isakrita, okay? Town here means really not a name, but it's like a kind of village, okay? And it's the Isakrita, the Reish Galuta. It's the village, the area where the Reish Galuta lived, okay? Namely, so many people come back and forth to interact with the Reish Galuta as the head of the Babylonian community, that they establish some sort of residence in that, either to get permission for business or other kinds of things. Amale Rav Nachman, Ma'itama. So Rav Nachman raises the question, okay, what's the reasoning? Okay, Ilema mishum deshchiche gabe charmana. If we say, okay, that we're going to say that it's because of the fact, okay, that a lot of people are there and they're visiting the government, the governor, Madkire Ahadade, Kulhu Yisrael, okay? Then they're going to be reminding each other that they're all Jews, and therefore they're going to be careful about the Eruv Chatzerot, okay? In terms of sharing and building, being together as a community. Nami, also, B'tzafra de Shabta, Shchiche Gabe Hadade. The same way on Shabbos morning, okay? We could argue too that here too people have come to the town of the Reish Galuta to hear lectures or to learn or to spend Shabbat with him. So again, in either case, there are going to be multitudes of people there that are going to be careful about Eruv Chatzerot and remind one another. Ela Amar Rav Nachman, but on the other hand, says Rav Nachman, Kegon de Iskarta de Nitzoi, or what about, he says, similar to the village of Nitzori? Okay, in that case, okay, that was a particular person who was the private owner of the town, okay? And maybe in his case, that town also became public for a different reason, okay? Okay, in that case, Art Scroll simply suggests, by the way, that the town retained its original name of the individual, even though it became a public town. Now, the Braita is now going to raise a certain concern. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Braita. Ir shel yachid v'ne'aseit shel rabim. If we have a private town and it became a public town, v'reshut rabim overet b'tocha, and there is a public thoroughfare, okay, right, that goes through a reshut rabim that goes through this town, okay, what happens? Ketzad ma'arvinota. How do we then make a Erev Chatzerot with this situation? Okay. Now, before I continue, I just want to point out the Gemara is ultimately going to raise an interesting question. Okay, we think of a village, let's say, and say there's a public thoroughfare going between it. Does that public thoroughfare, is that horizontal or is that vertical? Would that make a difference? We're going to have to look at the Gemara in a moment and see. Okay? However, the Gemara now continues. Okay? According to the Braita, it tells us, Oseh lechi mikan v'lechi mikan, that one could make a lechi at one end of the public thoroughfare and another end of the public thoroughfare. O kora mikan v'kora mikan, or a kora at one end and a kora at the other end, right? V'nosei v'notein ba'emtza. And one can carry from one side of town to the other side of town through this public domain as if it were part of a private domain. Ve'ein ma'arvin ota l'chatza'in. But we cannot make each half of the community, of that village, a separate Eruv Chatzerot. Ela o kula, either we make the entire town, okay, one single Eruv Chatzeros, or mabui b'fnei atzmo, or we make each alleyway in each, let's say, half of the town, okay, and people have to make the Erev Chatzerot with that in each case. Okay? Now, Haita Shel Rabim, let's say the opposite now. We have a town that was public. Vaharehi Shel Rabim, okay, and it's still public. Right? Let's go on. Ve'en la ela petach echad. Okay, but the town only has one entrance. Okay, in other words, let's say it's a walled town. There's only one, okay, gate to it. Ma'arvin et kula. Okay, according to this, we do, right, the entire town in a single eruv. Man, according to whom? Tatana the Me'arva Reshut Harabim? Who is it then that says that it's possible to put an eruv in an area that's Reshut Harabim? Okay. Amar Rav Huna, Berei the Rav Yoshua. Says Rav Huna, the son of Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Yehuda he. It was Rabbi Yehuda who said it's possible to put an eruv on a Reshus Harabim. The Tanya, as was taught in a previous Braita that we all remember learning, Yeter al Kain. Furthermore, Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda said as follows: Mi sheyesh lo shnei batim b'shnei tzidei Reshut Harabim. One who owns two houses on either side of a public thoroughfare, oseh lechi mikan v'lechi mikan, can make a lechi on one side and a lechi on the other side, on the second house, o kora mikan v'kora mikan, or a beam on one, or a beam on the other one. V'nosei v'noten ba'emtza. And he can go and carry back and forth, okay, through this Rishus Harabim in this manner. Amrulo, but the sages said to Rabbi Yehuda, Ein ma'arvin Rishut Harabim b'chach. It's not possible to do a Rishus Harabim, right, in that manner. Okay? Amar mar. Okay, so what happens? Okay? Says the Gemara. We continue with the following. Ve'ein ma'arvin ota l'chatzaim. Our Braita then said, however, that we cannot put half the town and make that a separate Eruv. Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa wants to qualify. Lo amru ele la'arka. He says, this, we say, applies only when the Rishus Harabim runs the length of the town. Aval l'rechava ma'arvin. But if the Rishus Harabim ran horizontally through the town, that we can then do so, right? We can then make an Eruv. And what Rav Papa's important statement is, we can then make an Eruv for the, let's say, the upper half of the village or town, and also a separate Eruv for the lower half, the ones below the horizontal Rishus Harabim. Kiman, according to whom? Delo ke Rabbi Akiva. But this is not according to the view of Rabbi Akiva. The Rabbi Akiva, because were to be according to the view of Rabbi Akiva, ha'amar regel hamuteret b'mkoma oseret. Isn't it not Rabbi Akiva who says that a foot is permitted in its own place, restricts it out in the other place? Afilu shelo b'mkoma. Okay? In that case, he says, even if it's not in its place. So the Gemara says, what is it referring to here? Okay? In other words, in this case, if Rabbi Akiva would be saying, okay, that if 3 people lived in a courtyard and one purposely decided not to join, okay, it's very possible that it therefore nullifies the Eruv Chatzerot for the other 2 people. Okay? The same is going to apply, okay, in the situation of this village with the Rishus Harabim running through it, that by making I'll call it an Eruv for the upper half, okay, you're now going to put a limit on what the people in the lower half can do, or vice versa. So the Gemara wants to say, hold on a second. Afilu tema Rabbi Akiva, ad kan lo ka'amar Rabbi Akiva hatam, ela b'shtei chatzerot zo lifnim mizo. It says, when Rabbi Akiva made that statement, okay, he was talking about a situation that was somewhat unique, where you have one entrance from the Rishus Harabim into what I'm going to call an outer courtyard, and then from there you have an entrance to another household in an inner courtyard. And in that situation, Rabbi Akiva was saying, B'shtei chatzerot zo lifnim mizo, one inside from the other, de pnimit lit le pitcha achrina, that the inner courtyard has no other entrance, gateway, aval hacha, except here, okay, in this case, hani nafke bahai pitcha, okay, but here, in our case of the half of the town, north half of the town, or in the south half of the town, or the north half of the village can go on to the Rishus Harabim from their area, and those who live in the south half of the village or the town can get on to the Rishus Harabim, okay, from their area. Hai nafka bahai pitcha, they can go through this gateway. Vahani nafka bahai pitcha, and the others can go through that gateway. Ika da amre, and there are those who phrase this same discussion in an alternative manner this way. Amar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa, lo tema la'arka hu de lo ma'arvinen. Don't say that it's in regarding to the length that we cannot make an eruv. Aval l'rechava ma'arvin, but rather to the, when the Rishus Harabim is to the width, we can make a separate eruv for the north or southern parts of the village. Ela afilu l'rechava nami lo ma'arvinen. But even when the Rishus Harabim is horizontal through the town, according to this second lashon of Rav Papa, even then you cannot make a separate eruv for each part of the village or each part of the town. Kiman, according to whom? Ki Rabbi Akiva, according to the view of Rabbi Akiva. So the Gemara says, then afilu tema rabbanan. But you could say, you might say, what about according to the rabbis? Ad kan lo ka'amrei rabbanan. Up to this point, the rabbis did not say it. Hatam ela b'shtei chatzerot zo lefnimi zo de pnimit. Right? There, we said we had dealt with a situation of two courtyards, one external, one internal, regarding the internal one. Achada ledasha umishtamsha. Why? Because there we might say the people of the inner courtyard, okay, could close the door, and therefore they could carry within their own inner courtyard and have nothing to do, reject, so to speak, any need for an Erev Chatzerot with the people of the outer courtyard. Aval hacha, but here in regards to the two parts of the town, mi matzu masalke reshut harabim mehacha, is it possible that they can go out onto the Rishus Harabim, okay, from here, right? In other words, how are they going to get out? Amar mar, says the master, o kula, o mabui b'fnei atzmo. Therefore, our text said that you have to make an eruv for the entire town, or the residents have to make it one alleyway at a time. Maish, so the Gemara asks an important question here. Okay, Maish na de lechatzaim de lo de asrei ahadade. Okay, what is so unique then and different about the fact that you say we're there, according to the second lashon of Rav Papa, that if you were to do separate tchum, right? Eruvei chatzerot, that one would prohibit the activity of another, okay? Mabui, nami asrei ahadade. If they do it each individual alleyway, isn't that also going to limit other people from doing so? So now the Gemara continues. Hacha b'mayaskina. What are we talking about then? Kigon da'avud daka. We're talking about a situation where they set up a partition. V'chiha da'amar Rav Idi bar Avin. But, says the Gemara, here, what about what was said by Rav Idi bar Avin, Amar Rav Chisda, in the name of Rav Chisda? Echad mibnei mabui, she'asa daka lepitcho. If one person, okay, that is associated, okay, with this mabui, right? And he sets up a partition regarding his opening, his gateway. Eino oser al b'nei mabui. He does not make a limitation, a prohibition on other people that are connecting with that particular mabui. Okay? But they could join in a shituf mabuot without him. Okay. Going to continue now with another part of the Braita. Haita sharabim v'harehi. Right? It was town, a public town, and it still is. But remember, it only has one opening, and therefore it was said, according to the Braita, we have to do one Eruv for the entire town. Okay? Rabbi Zera, Arva Lamata, the Bay Rabbi Chia. Okay? A story, we're told, where Rabbi Zera made an Eruv for the entire town, okay, of Rabbi Chia. Okay? A single Eruv. Velo Shavak La Shior. Okay, and what happens, right? And he didn't leave any for the remaining section. Okay? Amarle Abaye. And so Abaye, okay, is going to challenge him. Now, we have to assume that Rabbi Zera did so thinking that the town had been originally a private town and then became a public town. So Abaye says to him, Mai tama avid mar hachi. What's the reason that the master did this? Amarle, okay, Rabbi Zera says to him, Sabe dida, amrale, the elders of this community said to me, Rav Chia bar Asi, ma'arev kula. Rav Chia bar Asi used to make a Eruv for the entire town. Va'amina shmamina, ir shel yachid v'ne'aseit shel rabim. And I said to myself, it must be that it was a city, a private city, that then became private town, that became a public town. Okay. However, Abaye then responds, and he tells Rabbi Zera, Amar le ledidi. They said to me, Amruli hinhu sabe, these very same elders of the town, Hahi ashpa havala machad gisa, that there was a large refuse pile, a public dump at one end of the Rishus Harabim, okay? Right? And so therefore that's where it had a single opening. That's why the town only had one gateway. Vahashta, but now, the ifne la ashpa, that they cleared out, okay, cleaned it out, havela kishnei ptachim. It's a situation like it has two openings, right? A full Rishus Harabim, va'asir, okay? And therefore, it's forbidden to do it that way, to make the single, okay, Eruv for the entire village, the entire town. Amarle lav adaati, And Rabbi Zera responded, I wasn't aware of that. Okay? In other words, in a sense, either he's admitting I made the wrong decision, or in a sense, he said, since I didn't have all the adequate information, that was the situation. Okay, we get now to a new Braita, okay, with a different case. By mine Rav Ami Bar Ada. So a question, a problem was raised by Rav Ami Bar Ada, okay, Harpana, who came from Harpana. Marbe Sulam Mikan Upetach Mikan Mahu. Okay, all right. So he came from Rabbi Allah, inquired of Rabbah. Okay, he asked the question of Rabbah. Let's say we have a situation where it's clear we have a gate at one end of the town to go in, but at the other end of the thoroughfare, they placed a ladder so one could climb up over the wall. Okay, what's the situation there? Amarle, he said to him, Hachi Amar Rav. This is what Rav taught. Sulam Torat Petach Alav. He said that according to Rav, a ladder can have the status of an entrance. Amar Laho Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman immediately responds, Lo tatzitule. Don't listen to him. Don't pay attention to him, to Rabbah, because he didn't understand Rav's statements correctly. Hachi Amar Rav Ada Amar Rav. This is what Rav Ada said in the name of Rav. Sulam Torat Petach Alav, Vitorat Mechitza Alav. A ladder can have the status of an opening, but a ladder can also have the status of a partition, of a wall. Torat Mechitza Alav. It has the status, so to speak, of a wall. Kida Amran, as we've said. Okay? In other words, okay, by doing so, okay, if it's a, let's say the entrance is at one end and there's a wall here, it's sort of a dead end wall, what happens? Okay, in that situation, okay, right, one could climb over and therefore have an exit, right? Torat Petach Alav, it's also possible as an entranceway. Bisulam shebein shtei chatzerot. Why? Because we also could have a situation where someone put up a ladder, okay, and made it an entrance between two courtyards. Okay, ratzu echad ma'arev. If they want, okay, one person could make an eruv, one chatzer. Ratzu shnayim ma'arvin. If they want, then the two courtyards can join and make combined eruv chatzerot, right? And right, or have two separate eruvim, right? Now, Umi Amar Rav Nachman Hachi, asks the Gemara, and did Rav Nachman really say this? V'amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. And didn't Rav Nachman say in the name of Shmuel, Anshe Chatzer, V'anshe Mirpeset. Okay? We have a two-story residence. Okay? We have people living on the first floor, and then we have a, let's call it for the moment, a balcony, a gallery. Okay? If you look at the picture on 59B3 in the lower right-hand column of the notes, you can see the example, okay, there, all right? Okay. So what happens? V'anshe merpeset sheshachachu, that they forgot, v'lo irvu, and they did not make, okay, a joint eruv together. Im yesh lifneihem daka arba'a eina oseret. If we have a situation, okay, where there is a petition, okay, right? Namely, the petition, okay, is 4 tfachim high, okay? It does not limit, right? V'im lav oseret. And if it's not, okay, if it's more than that, then, right, it does not prohibit them from carrying from one to the into the chatzer below. Okay. Hacha b'mayas kinan. What are we talking about here? Okay. B'delo gavoa mirpeset asara. We're talking about a situation where the balcony, the gallery, is not 10 tfachim above the floor of the courtyard. Ve'ilo gavoa mirpeset asara, and if it's not, okay, more than 10 tfachim, okay, ki ka'avi daka ma'i have, okay, when they make some sort of a partition, okay, then what happens? Okay, what good is it? How does it allow them, right? Is it considered separate areas and not, and limiting one to another? Okay. So the Gemara is going to give an answer, and that's where we're going to pick up tomorrow. The Megufefet. Okay. We're going to see that what happens, okay, if that example is closed in. Right? And that's where we'll pick up tomorrow on Samach. Okay? All right, guys. I'm just before we finish, okay, we're going to have to come up with a plan for next week. But I'm not sure what to suggest because I don't know yet whether the davening is going to be starting from Yishtabach or going back to Birchos HaShachar. So I'll try to find that out, and then we'll try to come to some understanding. Okay?
What about Friday?
This Friday is a very good question, Owen. I have no idea how long davening is going to run. Okay?
Yep.
Hoshana Rabbah. So I'm going to say, since we've been finishing between 8:30, 8:35 now, I'm going to suggest that we keep it Friday at 9, okay? 9 thereabouts, all right?
Okay.
That's the best I can suggest.
I suggest we just get rid of the pandemic, and that'll be much easier.
Very good.
Get
We'll
rid of
put
the
you in
pandemic.
charge.
See, Erwin, I resolved the problem already. See how easy that was?
All right, everybody.
Okay,
Take care and stay well.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Good day.